All right, the people are trickling in here. It is a Monday morning, a beautiful morning in Charlotte. Next door, there is some hammering done. They're doing a renovation, so apologies in advance for some hammering noises in the background. I am sorry about that. The Oscars were last night. I didn't watch a single minute of it. I did watch the movie Up, which was fantastic, and I don't have any tear ducts left. They're all just, I'm very dehydrated this morning. And Coach, I understand it. You're a big movie buff. I know this from our friendship over the years.
Yeah.
But I sense that you didn't pay much attention to the Oscars this year either.
You sent a note in the document, not for the first time. I got to know who hosted it. I know nothing. This just wasn't a year. To me, a movie it's a big deal. You go to the theaters, you get your popcorn. Many times I was with my wife or my kids or my best friends, and it's a night out. It's a fun thing. And this year wasn't that. We watched it at home. So I felt like, plus my son was home from college for the first time yesterday. My daughter got home Saturday. So we had, in fact, literally when I said, what movie should we watch after dinner? My daughter said, no, let's just talk. I'm like, well, that's a first. So yeah, we just hung out and talked. And I know nothing. I don't know what won. But regarding Up, so I took my kids to the theater to see that movie. And all I can tell you is I've never seen it again, because after the first 2 minutes, your shirt is soaked, right? Wait, I saw with my wife and kids, and this was our life, right? Those first 2 minutes, which is as good a movie making as there is in movie history. Wouldn't you agree those first 2 minutes?
Oh my God. My wife, she's seen it already.
Okay,
so
yeah.
I watched it with my 4-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen it. I had heard everyone
Yeah.
was telling me, like, watch out, first 10 minutes of that movie.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching it, and I noticed that my wife was out of the room. She was in the kitchen, like getting Molly's snack ready or something like that. And I was like, the movie already started. She's like, I know.
Yeah.
There's a reason I'm in this room over here and not over there. And I totally got it after that.
Yeah.
It was a lovely movie.
Yeah.
I thought the story, the whole chasing his dreams, and the relationship with his wife, of course, really, really sad. But I just love the whole aspect of letting go of your dreams and starting new ones. I thought that was really important, like storyline of someone who was chasing this dream his entire life. And then I think sometimes you need permission from people you love to like let go of something.
Yeah.
And I thought that movie really captured that. And I just thought it was funny. The squirrel thing you brought up, Coach, is like drop to the floor, laugh out loud type stuff.
Yeah, rescue dog. Apparently in his previous life before we got him, was allowed to go chase squirrels. That dog, my dog wants to eat a squirrel as much as he can. My previous dog never really cared much about it. He'd notice them. But yeah, squirrel. We do this all the time with them, right? Just on the last note of that, we have plenty of basketball to discuss. I remember reading once that art is defined as anything that moves you, anything you see that moves you or hear or experience. And one of my favorite movies is Shakespeare in Love. And there's a bet, the Queen makes a bet with William Shakespeare that he can't really represent true love in his art. And of course, he writes Romeo and Juliet, right? And it's all a make-believe movie. But Up does, in whatever number of minutes it is, those first few minutes, he does what Shakespeare tried to do with all of his work, just to get you to feel it really does move you in a brilliant way. And when you watch it with your kids, as you did, your daughter, like that, and your wife's in the other room. For me, my wife was next to me, and we're bawling our eyes out. I don't remember when Up came out. My kids were pretty young, and they're going to be 20 in a month, so it must have been a long time ago. But they had no idea why we were crying. But every adult cries in that movie.
Oh yeah. And oddly enough, my daughter, and this is the last note before we get into actual basketball talk. My daughter, like, we had to like turn it off and fast forward a little bit during the dog chase scenes when all the pack of just angry dogs are going after him. And it's the first time that we've watched a movie with my daughter, she's 4, that she's asking questions about like the plot line. And it's, as a father, it's really, I don't know, it's almost proud when your daughter's following along with the story and asking like, why is that guy leaving that guy? Why is that guy mad at that person? And it's just, I don't know, it's a really special moment. But we did have to fast forward through a lot of the angry dog stuff, because I was a little worried that she was going to see dogs in the neighborhood and just like be terrified. But great movie.
Yeah.
And lots of NBA stuff to get into today. Speaking of Oscars, shout out to Mike Conley and Kevin Durant for being producers and investors in a movie, a short film, live action short film by Trevon Free that won the Oscar. Not just nominated, but won an Oscar last night, which was really cool. He is Trevon is a big he's a big friend in the NBA community, and he was on our Count the Dings podcast, Growing Up the Same. He was on with Trayvon Edwards and James Madison, JM as I call him, not James Madison. They were on the show together this past week, and just having an Oscar winner on a podcast is amazing. So go check that out if you haven't. Growing Up the Same. It is really special how the NBA community is now getting into Hollywood.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Tom, because it's a conversation I've had a lot with Henry, that for the last 10, 15 years, I think maybe even starting with the sports guy, Bill Simmons on ESPN, there was the beginning of what became a major theme in sports, which is the merging of sports and culture.
Yeah.
Right. And I told Henry, we obviously talk about culture on the show, but where I think TrueHoop really has carved their own little niche is the merging of sports and politics. And I'm glad that we're doing that, because the sports figures themselves are doing that. And we're right there with them. So I'm not suggesting I'm not cool. I am fucking cool. And so are you. And so is Judy, Henry, 50-50. And I don't realize all these other sports networks and their take on culture, fine. But right now, this space is a space that I'm glad that we're in, because the athletes are there. We're right there with them. And I think this movie, I haven't seen it yet, I'm going to now, is addressing that. Like, our athletes are trying to be owners. Like, we've got athletes buying teams, right? Not just teams in Australia, teams in America, and not just NBA teams, although we have that too. With A-Rod buying the Wolves, for example. That merge is really starting to happen more and more. And I love it. And so in addition to sports and politics, we have art. So we have these guys executive producing a movie, which is art covering politics in the real world. So I think it's a great place to be. People, Tom, you know this well, people hate sports and politics merging. They don't think they should, but they've always been connected as allies or adversaries, I'm young enough to remember the 80 Olympic Games and the boycotts and everything, and then Russia boycotted in 84. There's always been sports involved in politics. I think of Jesse Owens and Hitler in Germany. These always are a factor. And I think our athletes are in prime position to do more than they ever have before. And we're right there in the front row with them, watching them, observing them, analyzing it, and discussing it.
Well, I think really, if you don't like politics in your sports, I think what you're really saying to me is just like a loosely translated, a coded way of saying, I don't want to see athletes or sports as human beings. Oh. I just think that it really feels like you're dehumanizing the athletic experience when you're saying, like, I just want these athletes to play sports and I don't want to think about anything else. Yeah. It really is saying, like, that's the whole shut up and dribble is like, it's such a dehumanizing thing to tell someone you are not more than just your jersey, right? And the stat line you produce on a game. So really cool to see that on the Oscars, and also, well, I heard about it. Really cool to hear about that on the Oscar night. And, there's lots of stuff to get into on the NBA, and I guess we'll start here because I've been watching a lot of Anthony Davis film here, and he has had 2 games back since his calf strain / Achilles tendinosis. And this guy is a flying pterodactyl. Like, LeBron calls him Big Bird for a reason.
Oh, I didn't know he called him that.
Yeah, LeBron calls him Big
awesome.
Bird. And in the movie, in the trailer for Space Jam 2, he is like a bird superhero.
Oh,
like,
that's so cool.
The brow is like a anthropomorphic bird, like just so flying in there. And I'm seeing almost none of that with Anthony Davis. He has 0 dunks in the 30 some odd minutes that he's played in the last 2 games against the Dallas Mavericks, who they don't have powerful bigs. They've Powell and KP Porzingis been hurt.
Kleber.
But Anthony Davis has been away from the basketball court for months, and he's really showing it. I don't see a lot of the powerful moves from Anthony Davis. I see a lot of fading away from the 3-point line and from the mid-range area. And he just doesn't look like Anthony Davis. And maybe we were expecting more from him. What are your thoughts on watching Anthony Davis for the last few days?
I watched him, all of his possessions this morning in that most recent game. Because he scored, I think, 17 or 18 points. He was just terrible. It's really, I mean, you nailed it. He made a couple shots, where I thought, hey, that's pretty good, AD, but mostly just awful. No burst to create separation on the ground in terms of lateral quickness and movement and changing speeds, and then no burst vertically. No dunk, nothing even close to a dunk. Just, I think he had 3 rebounds in the game. Very, very discouraging to see how bad he was. Yeah, he's not on the court on that play. We're going to get to that play in a minute because I do want to talk about how terrible Andre Drummond is on defense too. But I didn't realize AD, I just had said this to you, only played in 25 games so far. So he played in 23 games until these last 2. There's enough time to get him up to speed by game 1 or game 3 or game 4 of the playoffs. But what I just said, there's a difference here between game 1 where he's ready to go. He's in midseason. It's possible. He's got a dozen games or so left. But if we don't really see the old AD till game 3 or 4, it might be a wrap already.
Yeah.
Right. They're maybe going to be a 5 seed and they play the Jazz. They might be a 6 seed. Right.
They play the Clippers in the first round.
Exactly. That's just if the Clippers don't pass Phoenix. So they're in, I'm a little worried. I'm writing about them this week, so I'll study them a lot more. But let's just remove LeBron for a second, just focus on Anthony Davis. This Anthony Davis doesn't help them win a series. They lose. Even if LeBron is LeBron, they can't win a series in the West with this Anthony Davis. So Tom, you were right. We should be watching them. This matters. This is a franchise we should really respect. They're top 2 in defense and have been all season. And that's, golf clap. Good job, LA. You got top 2, but it won't matter. You need Davis. You need the dynamic duo. It can't just be LeBron superhero by himself. This ain't the Cavaliers in the East. This is the brutal West. And AD's got to get a lot better. And I have real concerns that he will. We'll see.
Like, I feel like KD coming back and looking magnificent from his Achilles tear has like brainwashed us to believe like any superstar that comes into the game after a long layoff is just going to be amazing. That's not true. Like every time we talk about the Lakers, it's always if LeBron James and Anthony Davis are 100%, they are the title favorites, or in some way we are insinuating that they're going to be 100% healthy. Like, what are we talking? Like Anthony Davis has not played for months. Even before that, he didn't look right. And then he has this Achilles issue, calf strain, which is terrifying. And then he comes back and he looks like, Bargnani out there. Like he's just not strong. He's the only like rim attempt that he's taken is like off of an air ball, or like he just had a putback at the rim.
Yeah, that was nice. He had one. Yeah, that you're talking about. He made a great play where he basically read a wide right field goal kick.
Yeah.
An air ball that missing to the right. I'm like, where's AD going? I don't like my guys going baseline for offensive rebounds, because normally the only thing you rebound under the rim is a made shot, which means it's not a rebound, right?
And then you're getting beat back.
Right. You want to go back to the middle. I preach that a lot. And I watching it live thinking, what is AD doing? I'm like, oh, he read the air ball. Good for AD. That was pretty good right there. But Caleb asked a great question just now, Tom. But Bargnani on the Knicks are playing the Raptors. But he can't even just be good Bargnani. They need AD to be AD. And we picked them last year in June to win it all, in part because he was every bit as good as he needed to be. He was at his prime. You nailed it, Tom. In the 25 games, even if you take away these last 2 games, he's not been the same. I've looked up his numbers, and I mean his metrics, not just his raw stat. He's not been as good. He's been good. He's a top 10%, not top 10 player in the league, top 10%. Big difference. He needs to be a top 10 player in the league for them to win it, because the West is just so loaded. So we got to be paying attention every game. You never know when he can turn it on, and then he's got to do it again and again. It can't just be one game and then fall back. No, he's got to get to a consistent level. And he's got to do it quickly because the playoffs are around the corner and every opponent in the West is really good.
Yeah, he said after the game, he said he's starting from ground zero, like he's starting from scratch, and that's never a good sign from when you hear your superstar that you're hinging a championship repeat hope in April, right before the playoffs are starting, that he feels like he's starting from zero. Now they have a lot of new players. Andre Drummond is integrated into this team. I love what I've been seeing from Ben McLemore, by the way.
24 the other day, yeah.
The green light that he has is incredible. Like the first time he touches the ball, it's going up. And they need that type of aggressiveness offensively. Remember, when LeBron was playing this year, even with half the season without Anthony Davis, this was a bad offensive team. Yeah. They were winning because of their defense. And I think LeBron's MVP candidacy was like, hey, he's leading this team defensively in a year where they're offensively not so great. And then when LeBron gets hurt, guess what? Frank Vogel's defense is still really, really good, except for Andre Drummond. Okay, so Anthony Davis and Andre Drummond on the floor this season in the 38 minutes in the last two games, super small sample size alert here, but still the eye test and the numbers point to the same thing. With those two guys on the floor, maybe the two best athletes, one of the two most athletic bigs in the league, right? Force players in the league that you just look at in a lab and their metrics are just like off the charts of how talented they are, right? Athletically, you want to say? 129 defensive rating with those two guys on the floor. 129. These are the two biggest bigs in the league, and they on the floor together. They can't stop anybody on the Dallas Mavericks. So let's segue here. Judy, let's pull up the clip again. There was this clip of Andre Drummond. Now, I thought maybe this was a Drummond mistake where JJ Redick is setting up for a high screen and roll at the top of the key. And Drummond is he's playing it on the other side of it, waiting for JJ Redick. Instead, JJ Redick, who's 38 years old and looked washed up in New Orleans, is just taking the ball to the right and just driving straight through the middle of the defense and lays it up. Okay, Coach, what's going on here that JJ Redick at this stage of his career on a new team, by the way, this isn't like he's been playing with this team for years and years and years. He's just going to take the ball like a layup line to the rim.
I don't know what defense the Lakers were in. I know they weren't supposed to allow that. My guess is Wes Matthews. Just keep playing this, Judy. I think Wes Matthews is guarding the ball. Isn't that right, Tom?
Yes.
So Wes Matthews probably screwed up. And if you see after the layup, he kind of lowers his head and bounces the ball as if to say, "Oh, I screwed up on this." He did. I think he was supposed to overplay JJ to his right and force him into the screen. But even if he wasn't, you can't let JJ Redick beat you that slowly. The Drummond probably has to stay home on Dwight Powell, is a good shooter. Horton Tucker really screwed up. If you watch Horton Tucker, he probably needed to be the guy helping. And then you look at Marcus Morris really raced out to guard Kleber, looking to shoot the three. Both of those guys probably needed to hang out, one or the other, to at least get in front of JJ somewhat. Very often you call a timeout when you see a defense this bad. But your point is right on with Drummond. I watched all of Luka's assists this morning on that game. He had 13 assists. And Drummond is just a bad defensive player. They doubled him a lot. They doubled Luka a lot, but he moved his feet. Drummond did pretty well, but his hands weren't active at all. He allowed easy passes for Luka to throw it to so McLemore. It was McLemore. Okay, that makes more sense. Matthew's a better defender. When you double Luka, you have to have active hands, especially when you're Andre Drummond at 7 feet tall. And they allow Luka to make simple passes to Dwight Powell, what we call the short roll. So he would get in the middle of the floor and then he'd make an easy play. Drummond's been bad, though, straight through. This is not just unique to the Dallas series because they played Dallas back-to-back games, these two games that Davis has played. Do I think Drummond can get better? Yeah, because I think Frank Vogel is a terrific defensive coach. And now he's got to play. McLemore's new. Davis is just getting back. Those two, and McLemore started the last game. So Drummond's really forced to deal with new guys. Davis knows what he's doing in Frank's system. He just hasn't done it in a while. But all of this is, we're in the West here. The Lakers don't have a chance to figure it out against whoever they play. Like, they're not a top 4 seed, which means they're playing a top 4 seed, right, by definition. And all those teams are good. In fact, I would argue the biggest break they could get, Tom, is finding a way to stay at 5 to play a weaker Denver team at 4 without Jamal Murray. So listen what I'm saying. Their best bet might play against the MVP.
Yeah.
Right? That might be their, and by no means am I saying LA is cruising to that win, even without Drummond. I mean, even without with Davis and LeBron not being so great, because even when Jamal Murray's out, Denver's still very good. But if they played Phoenix, Jazz, or LA Clippers in round 1, I don't think they're good enough without Davis just being amazing. And remember, Drummond getting much better.
We haven't seen LeBron James with a layoff like this.
Right.
We've seen LeBron James basically not miss any games for his entire career, but this is uncharted territory for LeBron himself. Like, he came back from his groin injury and then they shut it down again. Because they weren't competing for a title that year, but like with LA. So I sit here and I think when I imagine how the Lakers are going to look in a month, part of me just says, we're going to look really stupid, coach, is like when we're talking about this defense and what the way that Anthony Davis looks. And man, they're going to pull these audio clips and be like, haha, Laker fans are going to just eat us alive because we were doubting them. I'm sorry. Like, our job right now is to tell you what it looks like. And this looks like a mess. LeBron James is still sidelined for several weeks. We don't have a timetable for his return. Anthony Davis does not look like someone who is ramped up in practice or at a practice facility. He doesn't look confident. He doesn't look strong. And this is what we should, I guess, suspect at some level, but also, like, how much longer, like you said, how much longer of this Anthony Davis can we see without saying, like, this Lakers season's over?
Yeah. Well, you're right. We're never going to apologize for analyzing. I mean, I did pick the Lakers in June last year. I don't hate the Lakers, that's for sure. To when I picked them to win the titles, because that's what I thought would happen based on what we saw before the pandemic break, and knowing LeBron's OCD issues. And I thought, and Henry really helped me understand this too, he is going to rally the troops in that bubble. Like, they're not going to do what the Clippers did. This is different now. And so think of it this way, Tom. You and I will agree that LeBron James is not going to be playing basketball when he's 70. Would you agree to that?
I think it's safe to say.
Okay. So then let's just say
60,
for sure.
I'm not sure.
Right.
Okay.
So if we can acknowledge that at some point he's not going to be able to play in the NBA for even 1 minute, right? Now we're just arguing which point that is. Okay. It's unquestionable that at some point he's not going to be good enough to play, period. So now we're working down. 70 is not playing, 60 is not playing, 50 is not playing. 40 he could be playing. How good will he? We don't know that, right? But to just assume because he's LeBron James, he can recover from this lengthy absence and do, to your point where you on the document, do what Durant just did yesterday, right? It's a silly thing to assume. It's possible. You and I will agree that it's possible for LeBron James to come back day one and look as good as Durant did. I don't know that I would call it probable. He's a different kind of player, right? He's a very different kind of player. He's not quite the shooter that Durant is. And at Durant's size, that's one thing he's got. He can just always make that shot. So if LeBron isn't what he has to be, and Davis isn't what he has to be, well, the Lakers aren't going to be what they have to be. Like, it isn't rocket science here. And I don't have faith that he's going to be fine because he's been in the past. Faith has no business in this sport, right? You can dream all you want. We have to have cold, hard numbers. And I think you made another point too regarding defensive rating and small sample size. I don't need the metrics to know how terrible that Drummond and Davis have been on defense, because even if the Mavericks had missed every easy shot they got with those guys on the court, I can still process those are terrible shots to give up. Another team is going to make them at a higher level, right? I can do that. I watched those games. The fact that Mavericks made it was the only proof of what I already saw. They've got a lot of fixing to do. I do think they'll get better. I think they'll execute better. McLemore, I'm not surprised it was McLemore that screwed up on that pick and roll we showed and not Matthews, because he just isn't, even if he knows the defensive call, Tom, he isn't as locked in. He's never, to my understanding of Ben McLemore's career, he's never once played for a coach who demands as much out of his defense, possession by possession, as Frank Vogel. So that is going to be a change for Ben McLemore. He's got to start locking in every possession. It's possible, but if that's their only problem, good for the LA. The problem is it's not their only problem. They've got major issues to deal with beyond that.
Yeah, and Anthony Davis in his 2 games is 2 for 16 on 16 feet and further away from the basket. He has noted that everything is being left short. Like he's short on all his jumpers.
He missed one long shot. He hit the back of the rim once. I was so proud of him. Like that's what you have to do. You've got to shoot it with strength, and as I always say, let that motherfucker fly. And he was short arming. He's also, you mentioned, fading away a little bit, which I don't mind that. I don't mind fading away.
That's his game. That's
his game. A lot of those guys, they should be fading away. They're not worried about getting the foul. But yeah, he airballed 2 different shots. He clanged another one off the rim. And he just doesn't he doesn't look good. Yeah. Let's see. We'll watch. What do they play? Is it 12? How many games left do they have? 10, 11, 12?
Yeah, they're going to have some time here, not a lot of time, and a lot of quick games. So it's not like he can get some training in the off days and strengthen up, because he needs to get stronger. Like that's what you worry about with a calf strain or an Achilles tear or an Achilles tendinosis is the atrophy. The muscle atrophy is that you're not able to load as much on those leg muscles. And then you're trying to ramp up in the middle of a abbreviated season where the density is crazy. That is not a recipe for success. And we're not there, but it might be time in the next couple of weeks to write off the Lakers. It's just too little, too late at this point for LeBron and AD. And let's switch gears for temporarily here, because when we talk about Andre Drummond, it's not just that Andre Drummond is horrible defensively. It's that they have Marc Gasol on the team. And when you watch Andre Drummond play basketball, so much of this is just being in the right place at the right time defensively. And he seems like he's always in the wrong place. Just like he seems to be relying on his athletic gifts and his ability to jump quickly and just be able to have such force and not really understanding where to be at all times. And yet they have the guy in my book who has kind of defined the point of, 90% of defense is just being in the right place. And Marc Gasol is that guy. So the Lakers are bringing Gasol off the bench on a championship aspiring team and playing Drummond, who just seems to be lost defensively a lot of the time. Coach, I just feel like this is maybe this is just an exhibition, an audition for Andre Drummond to see what they have. And unfortunately, I just think Marc Gasol for this team, if they want to get to where they are, I think Gasol has got to be taking minutes away from Drummond, not the other way around.
Yeah, so the way I always put it, Tom, when you talk about being in the right place, of course you're right. What I always say is the goal of the defense is really to muck things up, especially with a guy looks like Marc Gasol. Muck things up, get in the way, be in the way. These guys don't make shots typically when you contest a don't let them get what they want to practice all the time. That's really the point of defense is we can't stop them from scoring. We want to curb their scoring, right? We want to mitigate their attack moves and everything. How do you do that? Take away what they're best at, what they practice most, what they're reliant on most. And so you muck things up, you make them go to a counter. The best offensive teams have counters for everything. Most teams don't, at least not at that same level. Gasol you're right, he does define that. He's not the high flyer, right? He looks like he's pretty long, but he doesn't jump. He never has. He doesn't move all that quick. He's just always in the way. You're exactly right. Yep. And can they help Andre get that? Yeah. I don't know if they have enough time this year to do it, though, but they need to be. Is Drummond willing to listen? I have no idea. I don't know him. I don't know if I'm Andre Drummond. Like I thought Dwight Howard last year really embraced his role. Yes. And we know why. Andre Drummond needs to do the same thing. Not to play like Dwight, but to think like Dwight. Let me just do what these men are asking me to do and not anything more than that. That's a big part of coaching anyways, getting guys to buy that, right? It's to me, it looks like, okay, if we need scoring, we're going to play Andre. If we need defense, we're going to play Marc Gasol. And we just got to get to the last 8 minutes of the game anyway and play Davis at 5. That's really the game that Vogel's got to figure out. But it's not figured out now. Right now, what you said is right. Let's just see what we got. The more he plays, the more Drummond will learn. Yep. We know what we got with Gasol. He is what he is on both ends. Andre, who's much younger, they're not sure what they have with him defensively. So you got to coach him up. The problem is there's not a lot of time in between games. And I want to ask you 2 things. One, I haven't looked. I know we have the brackets there, Judy. How far are the Lakers away from the 7 seed? Is there a way to drop
2.5 games? I think the Blazers have been in a tailspin. Otherwise, I think they'd be right there.
So it's unlikely they'll get to the 7 seed. And second thing is the first round. Normally, the first round of the playoffs, they there might be 4 days in between games sometimes. It's so different. Do we know this year if they're going to be more condensed? Because starting in round 2, they play the games every other day, right, until you get to the finals. Are they going to do the same thing? So, yeah, we're looking at it right here. So, LA's got 35 wins as a 5 seed. Portland's got 32 as a 3. They're full 3 games back.
3 games back.
In the win and loss column, yeah. So that's tough.
It's very unlikely that they'll fall to the 6 seed, to the 7.
7 seed,
Dallas.
Right. So yeah. But 6-3 is Lakers Clippers, yeah.
It's still on the table. I mean,
okay, right. So what do you know about playoff schedule, Tom, in round 1? Is it going to be the same as it normally is starting round 2, which is night game in, rest, game in, rest? There's never 2 games in between games starting in round 2. Normally round 1, you do have that weird schedule. They might be off 4 days. The Lakers need that. They need the old schedule, but I don't know if they're getting it this year. You know?
No, I don't think so. I don't know for a fact, but I do think it's going to be a little bit more condensed than it has been in the past, especially now that they're trying to do the play-in tournament. They got to kind of build in a little bit more days in the schedule. So the way the play-in tournament is going to work is the 7-8 seed play against each other. The winner of that is in. Yeah. The 9-10 play against each other. The winner of that goes to the next game against the loser of the 7-8. So instead of 7 and 10 playing, it's 7 and 8 playing and 9 and 10 playing. The winner of the 9-10, so it could be the 10 seed, gets in. There's no scenario in which the 9 and 10 get into the playoffs over the 7-8. It's going to be either at least one of the 9 and 10s or both of the 7 and 8 are going to make it in. So I think it's going to be great. And Howard Beck wrote about it today, and I'm really interested to read his story. But he essentially is pointing out, Howard Beck for the Sports Illustrated, is that tanking, as we know it, has come to an end. Whether that's going to ramp up in future years for other reasons, but the point is that play-in tournament has, I think, done a really good job of getting that Washington Wizards type team or the New Orleans Pelicans type teams who are way out of the 8 seed, but in the game for the 10th seed, that they're keeping like Toronto Raptors keeping Pascal Siakam playing. And I know they had a couple of days off here, but like the Washington Wizards, not just totally bailing on the season. I think tanking you haven't heard so much about it this season, partly because of that play-in tournament. I think that's a really good, I can't wait to read Howard Beck, friend of the program, to do that story on tanking. Now, let's talk about KD, because he played again and was marvelous again. He came off the bench very interested, had a gazillion points in like 28 minutes. And it got me thinking, Coach, like, is Kevin Durant the most plug-and-play superstar ever? Because when I think about, hey, a team has to incorporate Steph Curry, or it has to incorporate Michael Jordan or LeBron James, you almost kind of feel like the system has to change to maximize that player, or just kind of like that player is so good, but the ball needs to be in his hands and the offense has to like kind of play off of that player. Is KD like the least maintenance superstar in terms of like basketball system, that he can just pop in and like he's so tall, he can get a shot off of anyone? It just seems like for him, he doesn't necessitate a system. Does that make sense?
Of course. I would argue, first of all, it's a short list. Tall men, short list. Larry Bird came off the bench in his career one time, back-to-back games, scored 80 points. I know this because a young man that I coached a lot broke his record, scoring 81 off the bench for 2 games, coming off an injury. I had no idea Larry Bird ever did that. Kevin McHale came off the bench for a long time and always was what he was. But Bird and Durant, Magic Johnson probably could have done it. Like, the thing people don't understand about KD, I know that we understand this. And Gerard said this, I think, on Friday. He talked about this exact thing you're discussing, how easy it is for Durant. Durant is as rare a player as you're ever going to find, in that he's 7 feet tall. Okay. He's very athletic. I don't think he's an elite athlete. He's a very good athlete, which at 7 feet is just fine.
Yeah.
Okay. He doesn't have to be John J. Jordan. He's incredibly skilled, right? That alone already beyond unique. But the other thing is, he's a basketball genius. So if people always say it looks so easy for him, it is. He's worked really hard to make it look that easy. Nothing is forced, because almost nothing. Because it doesn't have to be, because he's got every arsenal in his game. Fadeaways are like Dirk. But I mean, I've been around long enough when I was coaching, helping players guard Dirk, when we would say things like, you can't let him shoot the 18-foot fadeaway. That's a layup for him. Nowadays, you would beg that.
Yeah.
But back then, because they didn't shoot threes. So for Dirk, you had to try to take that away. You had to break his rhythm up. So KD's got that part of him, like Dirk. He's just got the dribble game that Dirk never had, right? He's just he really knows how to play. Durant, so yes, he's one of those guys. They used to say Jordan never watched Phil Jackson's timeout. I looked for this during the 30 for 30, the Last Dance documentary, and you couldn't really tell so much. But the myth is that Jordan never paid attention because he didn't have to. And I believe a lot of that, not out of disrespect. I believe that Jordan, all he had to do was hear, because he's playing chess like few others ever played chess. And I don't think Jordan, as much as he was known for playing golf, whatever, the guy also knew what you were running. Like, he was a genius that way too. He also knew what his team was going to do. He knew how to force his will on you, in part because he knew where your weaknesses were. I think Durant's the same way. And so put him in any system you want. A lot of players are reliant on great system, and that's okay. Like, Tim Duncan would not have been Tim Duncan in any system. Yep. But he's one of the best of all time in that system. Durant is different. Like Kobe and Jordan, it doesn't matter. Those guys are going to be the elite of the elite of the elite, no matter how you play. Primary ball handlers like Westbrook, a little bit different in the sense that you have no choice but to bend to their will. You may not want to run. Westbrook's going to run. Yeah. And he should. He's the most athletic point guard of all time. Durant is just that gifted a player where he's the best. He's as good a finisher as there ever been in the game, right? Because it doesn't matter where you're talking about finishing. Threes, twos, layups, dunks, like it's all in his arsenal, right? And there's a pace about him. He's always, he didn't have this as a rookie. He had it pretty early in his early 20s. And I watched him. I watched him yesterday for this reason. It's just like, how does this guy do it? And then you realize there's never been another one like him. He's a unanimous first ballot Hall of Famer. I just hope he can be healthy. I'm worried about that. Right. Yeah. I'm sure the Nets guys were worried too. Like, are we going to lose him again fast? You know,
it's hard not to play that guy 45 minutes because he's that good, right? Like, if you have 40 minutes of Kevin Durant, you're pretty much going to win every single game, right? Like, it's going to be
but he's so gonna hard. Hit, Tom, don't you think? I want to hear what Gerard says when he comes on later. Like, he's going to get some vicious screens against him. He's going to get hit, and you should. Like, no, not illegal, just. You've got to see, because old people, we bruise better. We bruise easier. Like, you got to hit that dude, man, because if you don't, he's going to give you a 40 in any different playoff game and you're in trouble.
So the Kevin Durant return is not the biggest news out of the Big Apple this week. And the New York Knicks on national TV won their 9th straight game. You called it on Julius Randle. Just unbelievable. Kevin Durant, of course, like, when you watch this highlight here, like, how many players can just do that? It's a very short list, right? But like, the Brooklyn Nets, amazing. We've had this story before, is like, hey, KD's back or Kyrie's back and James Harden's back. But then when you talk about the Knicks, it's I just want to spend a couple more minutes here talking about Nerlens Noel. That guy is so good defensively. And I've always believed in this dude.
Me too.
Whether it was in Philly, whether it was in OKC, I was like, why isn't this guy starting? And Dallas too is like, this guy should be, he could be a defensive player of the year candidate if he was able to play 30, 35 minutes for a good team in the NBA. You're seeing it now with the Knicks. And under Tom Thibodeau's system, his ability to block shots out of nowhere on the help side defense at the rim is outrageous. Like, Pascal Siakam was going up for a dunk, like a two-handed dunk, like going up there, and out of nowhere, he just Noel rotates over and just like swats it away without touching Siakam. Like, his timing, his hand-eye coordination is incredible, and he just works. His work ethic, when he's not on the floor, he's running the floor. I love watching Nerlens Noel play, and Julius Randle has been a sensational story. But I just want to spend some time here recognizing that pickup by the Knicks has been fantastic, and he's been so good for them, especially defensively.
He's one of the better defensive players in the league. His offense is bad, and I think that's always been his issue. And it makes me sad It doesn't have to be bad. Like there's he could get much better offensively. Defensively, I always say, the size is one thing and length. I mean, that's all a huge advantage, but quickness is the huge factor in this league. And when you've got that kind of size and length, he is so quick. He is like a guard. He really is. And it's a problem for other teams. And I give Coach Thibodeau great credit. Of course, Nerlens gets the most credit, but Coach Tibbs and his staff have done a great job. We talked about this on the pick and roll play. It wasn't pick and roll, it was pick and pop with Dwight Powell and Luka. JJ. You have to know what you're supposed to do. Like, that's step one of defense is, okay, we have only 5 guys on the court. How are we playing this collectively, right? And that's where I feel like Coach Tibbs has done the best job with this team, like any good defensive coach does, is they normally play defense the way they're supposed to be playing it.
Yep.
Everyone's connected that way. The best chance for you to play good defense is to everyone be doing, connected by that little string that you got. And then you can shine. But if you force the guy the wrong way, well, now you've screwed everything up. We all have to be simpatico that way. And they've done it. The Knicks have been a great defense now for a while. And when you have that as a foundation, you can make some things happen. They beat a lot of bad teams in this 9-game streak, 2 good teams, a lot of bad teams, but you don't apologize for that. No. That's your job. You got to beat those bad teams.
They've been so good, and they outlast teams. And I do think that Thibodeau does a great job just squeezing out everything out of his players, which is good in the bad in the long term in some cases and good in the short term. Is just Julius Randle. Another Tibbs player is just outrunning everybody in minutes played per game. But they just outlast teams. Like the Pelicans the other night just like ran out of gas. And of course yesterday it was a lot of the same. But when you look at this 9-game win streak for the Knicks, I was curious your thoughts on the 8-game win streak for the Wizards that they're on, because if they're both like this is the opponent list for the Wizards. Okay. They've won actually 10 out of their last 11. So let's start from there. Orlando, Golden State, both wins. Phoenix lost by 28. Utah without Mike Conley, they won by 4. Great game. Sacramento, New Orleans, Detroit, OKC, Golden State, OKC, Cleveland.
Only real playoff team is Utah without their best player.
Yeah.
Donovan played that game. Conley didn't.
Still, Mike Conley did not play.
It's still a good win. Yeah.
So which is more impressive to you, the 9-game win streak from the Knicks or the 8-game win streak by the Washington Wizards?
Yeah, I would give the Knicks a slight edge because they've beaten twice as many playoff teams, 2 instead of just 1 by Washington. But you got to give credit to both teams. Your point about I don't like the playing game. I don't like the format, but I like the idea. I don't like. I mean, what if 7th seed won 53 games? Now you have to play, and the 8 seed won 44. But now they play one game. Well, any one game, who knows what can happen in one game? So I don't like that format, but the idea is cool, right? And so here we go. The Wizards could have traded Beal and tanked, and instead they're playing great basketball, and they really are. They're playing great basketball. And in any one game with Beal and Westbrook, they could give you 60 just out of 2 guys, and you're probably going to win that game. So I thought the Wizards were done, and they're not. And, what's going to happen going forward, who's to say, but they give credit for playing meaningful games in the spring. They did it a couple of years ago when Wall and Beal were healthy. I don't think it's a team. So if you think about, I may write about this too, after I write about the Lakers this week, like the danger teams, like who don't you want to play? No, you don't want to play any of these teams yet, but you have no choice. Golden State's got to be number 1 ranked in terms of pure danger team in any one game, right? Because they have Curry, but the Wizards are up there.
Like if the Wizards play the Nets and Harden's still out, KD kind of like iffy, not totally 100% playing every day. That is a scary team to be playing against in the first round. Now let me talk about Gafford has been a revelation. Gafford has been a revelation for the Wizards. I feel like the Bulls and the Wizards have just basically swapped teams over the last 3 years, like Jabari Parker, Satoransky, Robin Lopez, like go on down the list is like they've swapped their bench like over the last 3 years. And Gafford is 22 years old and is amazing in his role, like as a rim runner, as an athlete, as a high energy guy, blocking shots like crazy. He's going to be their long-term starter if he continues to do this. Like he's averaging 28 points and 15 rebounds per 100 possessions with 6 blocks coming off the bench for this team. It's been a revelation. And like, if they can find their center of the future with Bradley Beal, a guy who can defend, he's 22. So he's a lot more of a raw jump, pogo stick, block everything than he is just like a sound defender. But that can come in time, and under the right coach, like Gafford could be your long-term center. Like a second-round pick at 22 years old, why can't he be? They have Thomas Bryant who's coming back from his injury.
Thomas Bryant's good.
Yeah. So like if Gafford is their long-term starter there, or Thomas Bryant, whoever it is, they could be okay. They're not going to be a championship contender, but Gafford has been an amazing pickup for them. In Chicago, they're spiraling down the drain there in Chicago, and giving up Gafford seems like a really bad deal for them.
Well, on two things on those two teams. So in the Wizards case, they got Hachimura's playing better. He's still not a great player. He's a power player in a league that's kind of gotten away from that. I'm very high on Denny Avdija, who's just a rookie from Israel. I don't know what they'll do with their coach. It seems to me that they're playing much better. And I know that Tommy Sheppard, a dear friend of ours, is really close with Scotty Brooks. But you can make the argument that, okay, we've had this guy long enough. Look what the Sixers did when they changed voices at the top from our guy to Doc. And then the Wizards could do the same thing. And all of a sudden, Beal comes back and something's happening. Chicago, I mean, I said this on the show and I even tweeted about it. I think they should have traded Zach LaVine for Tyler Hero, Precious Achiuwa, the Miami pick. Maybe you get Duncan Robinson out of it. You try. I thought you try to age down and just build around their young players, because what they did instead is they went and got Vooch, who's better than anyone they had at the center spot, but it's where are they going?
Yeah.
Where are they going? Now you have two guys that are older and don't want to just the matchup with the young players makes no sense. I'm concerned about the Bulls' direction for sure.
Hey, Judy, can we bring in Gerard here? I want to hit one big story here in the NBA that I think is under the radar, what we're seeing with Steve Clifford. Steve Clifford is going to be out for the next few games here because he is registering several positive tests for COVID. And it's a fascinating story because Steve Clifford is in the middle of his vaccination schedule. He already took his Moderna, this reporting from ESPN, took his Moderna shot a few weeks ago, first dose. Then on Thursday, he took his second dose of Moderna. And then later that day, tested positive for COVID. And the team was very surprised by this because A, he already got his first dose of his vaccine. Secondly, he's in this like NBA bubble on the road where they're trying to minimize contact and have transmission. So what the contact tracing, how did Clifford get this? Well, it's a lot lower for NBA teams than maybe your average person. Third, this is a guy who's had heart issues in the past where he's had to take leave of absences from the sideline. So that is an additional concern. Even though he's not 65, he's 59. That's also a factor here that we have to keep an eye on. And then lastly here is he had produced two negative tests. And so they thought that they were dealing with a false positive on Thursday. But then over the weekend, he registered multiple positive tests, which for people who need to hear this, listening to this show, like even though you have gotten one vaccine dose, whether it's Moderna, J&J, or Pfizer, you can still get COVID. And not only that, it doesn't have to be a false positive. He is asymptomatic, which is good. It's being reported that he is asymptomatic. He says he doesn't have a temperature. We'll see what happens over the next few days. Like best wishes on that. But what we're dealing with is someone is testing positive for COVID multiple times, and they already received the first dose of the vaccination. So it's a great lesson. I wish it didn't happen to Steve Clifford, but it's a lesson, a cautionary tale for those who think, hey, I got my first COVID test or vaccination, I'm good. Because what we're seeing around the country here, Gerard, is a huge decline in vaccination or vaccine doses in America. We're seeing a big decline, especially a lot of people are taking their first dose and saying, I'm good, and then not coming back for the second dose. Now, whether that's J&J reaction is seeing that news story about J&J is people are now apprehensive about getting a dose, or maybe they're just thinking like, I don't want the symptoms. I've heard these terrible symptoms of getting the second dose after the second dose. I don't want to have anything to do with that. But let this be a lesson, is that even if you've gotten the first dose of the vaccine, that does not necessarily mean you're immune from this disease. It just means that your body is able to fend off the severe effects and fight the disease, so that you're not ending up being hospitalized, which in the case of Steve Clifford is such good news that he has gotten the first dose at the very least, and then the second dose, because in an alternate universe, it could have gone much differently for a 59-year-old who has had heart problems in the past. So Gerard, I feel like this story should be 1A in the NBA in some respects, is the fact that this is happening to someone who has been a longstanding head coach in the league and has had some issues in the past and is now going to be out for a lot of games with the Orlando Magic.
100%. And I say this every week. It's just because you have the COVID vaccine, it's not your free pass to be an idiot at Disneyland now and just run around and be like, oh, life is great. Like, it's not how this works. You're still supposed to wear your mask. And not only that, after your second dose, you have a 2-week period before you're fully immunized, right? Number 3, all it means is if you are vaccinated fully and it's been post 2 weeks, if you get COVID, which you still can get, you're likely not going to get hospitalized and going to die. That's all it means. It still means you can carry it and pass it on to other people. And I just feel like those people who were getting 1 dose and going, oh no, I'm not getting the second dose because I'm like, what? I just don't even know what that means. Like, what? Like, what is your brain process? Like, I just don't understand.
There's a science to it, and those of us that aren't scientists should probably listen to the scientists. And they're going to do it. They're still studying a ton. One of the great things about having this vaccine in the world we have with sports and athletes getting tested every day is we're getting so much more data. We're not getting tested every day, the 3 of us. They're getting tested all the time still. So it's even more evidence that, hey, you can have a positive test after the vaccination. We don't know for sure that you are able or likely to transfer it after you have the vaccine, because they're still testing that. I think Gerard's right. You probably can, maybe for less days, because your body beats it off faster. But until we know definitively, we should be wearing our mask indoors, period, end of subject. There's no debate. We're all following this science. I'm hoping, I think Tom's point, which is great, is, I mean, if I'm Steve Clifford's family, I'm a little nervous. Yeah. Right? It's great that he's asymptomatic. It's probably the vaccine's working, right? So great. But what if he didn't have that issue, but his wife did, right? She wouldn't be getting tested all the time, but because he is, now we know, hey, he brought it into the house. You have to pay attention to this kind of stuff. We all should be learning from the data they're collecting from all these different tests and studies that they're doing. I brought up something different, though, guys, regarding this to Henry over the weekend. And I don't think we have an answer. You guys might. What if, just play a game with me, what is the NBA rule on testing positive for COVID 2 weeks after 2 weeks from your second dose? Are you still having to do a 14-day or 12-day quarantine? Because they better delineate exactly what that ruling is. Because if they don't, and they leave it up in the air, you know damn well LeBron tests positive 3 weeks after his second dose. He ain't being quarantined, but some other dude might from another team. And now we have this gigantic controversy. So I asked Henry, what is the exact language regarding this? We need to know.
I was just going to say, because you're talking 2 weeks post vaccination, that's playoff time and money. Right. And we ain't messing with the money. We know that. That is not happening. So I'm pretty sure the language is ambiguous right now. Like, we'll see how it goes.
But this is my point, though, Gerard. So, the so-called fans of the NBA, they really think it's all fixed. The Knicks fix all everything's, the referees, whatever. They're going to say that if a Lakers player doesn't have to sit, but maybe a Clippers player does, or a Jazz player does. That's why they better have that language very clear before it comes up.
I agree.
Yeah, they're going to have some sort of secondary test to just confirm the first test. And that's the issue here with Steve Clifford too, is he tested positive on Thursday and then registered 2 negatives, and they continued to test him. And then he registered 3 positives over a 4-day span. So he went from positive, negative, negative, positive, positive, according to ESPN reporting. So this is definitely a story to watch, especially with those playoff implications with LeBron James, because we haven't had this sort of story hit in the bubble yet last year in the playoffs, but it would be a massive story if a superstar had already vaccinated, fully immunized, testing positive for COVID after the fact. It is still very possible to test positive after your second shot, even after the 2 weeks out. Friday was my 2 weeks out day. And it was really exciting. I did more of the same. I just did some yard work outside, and I did some drawing and watched my kids. So Gerard, last thoughts on KD and his return. I mean, 33 points in 28 minutes, but what did you see?
I saw Kevin Durant being Kevin Durant, right? I mean, this is, you guys said it so eloquently and well. He is such a malleable superstar, right? Probably the most in the history of the league. You can drop him into any place and it just works. And it's because he doesn't need to dominate the ball to do what he does, right? Catch and shoot, right? In the mid-range, right? Run him off a pin down, right? Like get him on a wing and isolate, like, and he's got 1-2 dribbles and he's already at the rim. Like, it's just, he can do all those things. So it works for them. I think what we're seeing with him though, and you mentioned Anthony Davis and everything else, and we talked about this, when you're recovering from an injury, it's not just the injured body part that needs to recover. Yes, of course, that is the focus. But as you mentioned, Tom, all the other muscles surround tend to atrophy because you're not doing shit while you're injured, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to get the baseline level of strength back to where it was pre-injury. That's what all the smart science says. Now, we know not every NBA team has forward-thinking athletic trainers and performance staffs and all. So it's all, I don't know what the Lakers are doing. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I couldn't tell you. I do know on the Nets side of things, this, even if Durant didn't get kneed by Ariza and didn't have the hamstring, they were going to be cautious with him this season anyway, regardless, because he's still coming off of an Achilles tendon surgery, right?
He wasn't playing back-to-backs.
Yeah, that was always their plan from day one. So this is just making it much more apparent to everybody. And I think for the Nets, and because things are changing in the East, if you guys have noticed, Ben Simmons has been out for a little bit with Philly. They dropped that kind of all-important little 2-game series to Milwaukee. The Nets are now ahead by a game and a half. If you can find a way to lock yourself into your seeding, like if you're those top 3 teams, and really skip those last 2 games of the season, that's a huge advantage, because now what you have is that week off, that because the play-in week, because you're not in that, and that end of that week prior, that's a good 9-10 days of rest. Doesn't sound like a lot. That's a big deal. So I think that's what these teams are going to be looking for. Can we make a run right now over these next 8-9 games? Go 8-9-0, 7-2, whatever. Lock ourselves in, and then let's start thinking about the postseason.
Yeah.
Well said there, Gerard. I mean, I think when you talk about the upper echelon of the NBA, when you look at the Nets, such a weird season. Like, they're on pace for a 55 win season over an 82 game schedule. They're the number 1 seed. I mean, if you're the 8th seed and you have to win 2 games essentially to get into that, I think there could be like a Damian Lillard situation from last year in the bubble, where it's like those guys, they ball out, heart on the line, season on the line, and then they get into that first round matchup and they're like, oh shit, we got to deal with KD now. Yeah. Right.
There's an interesting thing though. The 1 seed is the only seed that can't really dive in on a scouting report.
Yes.
The same time as everyone else can. So
that's a great point.
They do get the benefit of seeing them play most recently, and so get the freshest data, but that's way less valuable than having a week to prepare. That's why it'll be interesting to see what happens here. I forget which one of you guys said it last week, but it'd be great if the first seed could pick their opponent.
Yeah.
Right? Already.
That you guys mentioned as we wrap here, back in the day with the playoffs, you sometimes had 2, maybe even 3 days break in between games.
Yeah.
Like that may not is, and then Tom, you said it, that's not the case probably this year. So they're going back to that every other day, which with flight travel in between, that ain't great either. So we'll see.
Well, that leads us to our pick for the finals. And Gerard, you can take one of my selections. If you have one draft pick, East or West, who's the first one you're picking to make the finals?
I feel like this changes every day.
Yeah, me too.
Today it's Brooklyn.
All right, Brooklyn. Okay, so Tom, you can pick.
I got
Utah.
You want. Utah.
You're picking Utah. I'm going to go Clippers, but just to the point, Utah is just so deep, and to that point about the schedule, it's nice to have a good 9-man rotation. All right, Tron, what's your next pick?
All right, you took.
Don't count me. So you can pick Clippers. I would do Clippers too, but who would you pick?
Nets are off the board. Utah's off the board. Clippers are off the board.
Philly.
It is noon.
Philly.
That's it.
Yeah.
Milwaukee, not on the table. Lakers, sorry. AD, get better. Everybody get better. Hope everyone has a great week. Thank you for joining us on the Monday Bring It In. Judy, take us out.